what we do. Let me kind of give you the story. For some of you don't know the whole story, so I'll kind of back up and give you the background a bit. Our church is 106 years old. We were established in 1912. We celebrated our 100th anniversary in 2012. 2006, we started obsessing about how we celebrate that, because that's a big deal when a church turns 100. And I didn't want to just have a cake. There's some seats. Hey, Jeremy, you sit right, like literally, right down front, dead center. That's at our church. Those seats are usually available. What's so fun is that I invite somebody who doesn't go to church. They think it's awesome. Like, you can sit with me on the front row, and they're like, "Oh, I get a great seat." And yeah, be here a few weeks. You won't think so. So we really obsessed about how we would celebrate that. Then one morning, really felt like the Lord just spoke to me, came in, and we said, to celebrate 100 years, we're going to plant 100 churches in the toughest places in the world where men and women are willing to give their lives for the cause of Christ. And so, real long story, real short, we announced that and then started out on that process. By the time we got to our 100th birthday, we planted over 1,300 churches in 63 nations. And the stories of the church planters are absolutely incredible. So this is a place Alton Garrison came here as pastor in 1986. He's now the assistant superintendent of the Assemblies of God. When Alton came, the church had been plateaued between 40 and 50 years at about 400 to 500. And they won't tell you that, but I've seen the records and the numbers, so that's the real story. Church had been in one location its entire time. That location was considered holy ground and sacred. So Alton did the biggest challenge of leadership of this church. We moved locations in 1990, and then under his leadership, the church tripled. That location's now a challenge. This kind of narrow strip of ground we're on is only about 10 acres. And so we've gradually bought more land. We own a building across the street and then some acreage behind it. And then last year, some more buildings that are over there. So I followed a legend, no pressure at all. And I'd always had in mind what kind of guy I wanted to follow. I wanted to follow a pastor who, under his leadership, he'd grown the church from about 600 to about 6. But that they had $1 million in the bank and paid for a building. That was just always what I believed God had for me. Instead, I followed a legend, and I approached that in a really unhealthy way. I became pastor, and almost immediately when I walk and pray, I like to walk and pray in the sanctuary. I went out and left. We ran about 1,460 to 1,500. And I just started walking and praying, Lord, I believe we're supposed to be a church of 2,000. And I pray that every day. And that really wasn't about souls. That was about competition. And the day we hit 2,000, the next day I started praying, Lord, I believe we're supposed to be a church of 2,500. And the day we hit 2,500, the next day, I started praying, Lord, I think we're supposed to be a church of 3,000. And that day the Lord spoke to me as clearly as he ever had, with just a word, and said, you're never going to be happy, are you? And so I realized how unhealthy that whole thing was. I'm not proud of who I was. If you knew me then, you didn't like me. I didn't like me either. So that's all right. Approval really mattered to me. And somehow approval was, if we have enough people, enough money, then I'm important. And so I've spent many years then praying against what I call the spirit of competition. And so that's why I didn't want Brother Moore to share any numbers, because that's just, I'll talk more about that later, but that's not relevant. That's not the mark. The mark of faithfulness is, can you be faithful regardless of how many people are in the room? That's right. So we now have 9 physical campuses and an online campus. We actually added the 9th physical one Sunday night. So church in Franklin, Tennessee voted to merge with us, and so that's pretty exciting about that. I'm looking forward to that. We've got one of our campus pastors from one of the more remote ones in Mahia, Texas. Where you at, Jason? Jason and Tina are here from Mahia. They're kind of, we're doing some experimenting. So we got a couple campuses that are still district churches in another district, but that they're tracking with us and learning with us and part of our team. We're just trying to see different models of how we can help grow the kingdom. So I'm not a trend chaser. In fact, I might be a dinosaur. We still have a choir. We still have Sunday school. We still sing hymns. So it's not like we're the latest, flashiest thing. One of our campuses a while back had biggest attendance day, and they were all excited. And the pastor asked me this question. He said, I just don't want to mess it up. How do we keep it going? And I realized I'd heard a lot of teaching about momentum, but not a lot about how to keep it going. And so that day I started making a list, and since then I've learned a lot about momentum. You're probably going to find things I missed. If you'll email those to me, I appreciate it, and I'll use it somewhere else. So I gave you an outline, and I gave you that. But I understand there's some people like, this is forced learning. So if you don't like outlines, turn it over and draw pictures. You're not going to offend me. We're not going to grade your outlines or turn them in. So if you like that, great. If you don't like that, don't use it. Everyone loves momentum. When you have momentum, you're better than you are. Accidental things work. New things are easier. Everybody loves momentum. We have jet skis, one of the things we do for fun. And we have one that's set up to tow somebody, whether wakeboarding or kneeboarding. My son Parker is right there. He's 6'4", and he's just lost some weight, but usually goes about 220. And to get Parker up on a wakeboard behind a jet ski, you have to squeeze it. Oh, there's some seats right down front, guys. Like the best seats, front center. Isn't that awesome? Praise the Lord. Yeah. You got to get here early to sit back there. It's just not right. So to get Parker up on the wakeboard behind a jet ski, you got to squeeze full throttle. It takes everything that jet ski has to get Parker up and on top of the water. But as soon as he's up on top of the water, you can throttle way, way back, and you're about a third of the throttle. It takes way more energy and way more gas to get him up than it does to keep him going. Once you have the momentum, keeping him going is easy. So I want to talk to you about how to manage momentum. I think a lot of times we get together and we just talk about if things are going bad. And so if things are going good, you almost feel guilty if things are going well. So if things are going great, this is for you. Now, if you're like, man, things aren't going good for me, that's okay, because I think you'll pick up some things in this, and we'll just kind of talk through it. So when you have momentum, first, don't spend too much time studying why you have momentum. Why are we growing? Don't spend a lot of time doing a big study, because all the time you spend studying is time you could spend doing the core things that establish the momentum. So I want to know what's happening, but I don't want to make that a major focus. So in the last few years, we've suddenly become very, very diverse. And so this church that historically is very, very, very white, no longer is. And so we're somewhere around 35% and growing non-white. If you come to our 11:30 service on Sunday mornings and you're white, you're usually a minority in that service. So it's really awesome. I love that. I still remember a few years ago, Geraldine Duncan, who at that point was one of our 8 black people. We could count them. We still know their names, and we're grateful to them. She came to me and she said, we need to do more to reach black people. We need to target them. And I looked at Geraldine and I said, I don't want to reach black people. I said, I want to reach lost people, regardless of what color they are. So if I just intentionally target blacks, I'm as racist as the person that doesn't want them in the church. So we went from being very, very white, like when I became pastor, you could count the number of blacks in our church and you wouldn't even need to take off your socks, to now very diverse with Latino and black and Asian. You know, that's probably not a big deal some places, But you know, in Arkansas and the racially divided South, and Little Rock, famous for racial tension, it's really unusual. So years ago, when a black family came, they would get pushback from their family and from their church, and they'd say, why would you want to go to that white church? And now almost every week in the guest center, I meet families who are coming to a church who aren't white. And I always lead the same way and say, so why are you here? And a whole lot of times now the answer is, well, I just wanted to attend a church that's diverse. Well, that's awesome. When black people are saying, I want a diverse church, and they come to us, we're just like, yes. So we've really changed that. We've spent 0 time studying why we've become so diverse. I have a couple ideas, but we haven't done studies, we haven't done interviews, no idea. We just keep doing the things that got us there. So that's number 2, keep doing the things that establish the momentum. Don't abandon the core strengths that are the reason why you have momentum. There's a temptation when you have momentum to make big changes, because big changes are easier when you have momentum. It's okay to make infrastructure changes, system changes. In fact, you probably have to, but don't abandon the core things you're doing that created momentum in the first place. Third thing, protect your values. When things are going great, when you have momentum, you get really, really busy. And it's easy to get distracted and experience drift in your values. That's not intentional. You just have a lot happening. You're trying to figure out staff, and you're trying to figure out rooms, and you're trying to assimilate guests and manage the growth. So one of our core values, you heard Larry refer to it, is every soul matters to God. Well, that was firmly established before we became racially diverse. In fact, probably that heart change has something to do with it, but we don't take that value for granted. So I preach against racism every chance I get. Almost every week it's included in the message. If I'm listing sin, I include that. In scriptures that use the word all, we always pause and look at what all means. I'll usually say, and now they know I do it, I'll say, now if we go to the original language, that word all means, everybody just say all. Yeah, that's what it means. And so we want to keep protecting that value. We want to highlight that value. We never want to take that value for granted. Fourth thing, don't make numbers the mark of success. So no one knows how many people attend First Assembly North Little Rock. Well, I know the numbers, and JT, he's somewhere here. Where you at, JT?
Up here.
Up in the booth. JT, he's like 21 years old. He knows the numbers because he keeps them. No one else knows. But I don't know the running average. I do know how many people were here, not this weekend, but the weekend before that. I can be within a couple hundred of our final average for 2017. So I know it, but we don't announce it. I never like it in introductions. Our people don't know. Our staff doesn't know. A while back, I was standing in the lobby downstairs, and I heard one of our staff pastor's wives talking to somebody, and they asked her how many came to our church, and she missed it by 1,000 on the low end. And I didn't correct her. I just smiled and waved. I was excited to hear that, because it doesn't matter. It's so tempting when you have momentum to celebrate the numbers. I saw a tweet a while back, and it said, record attendance day at, and I'll pick Calvary. Record attendance day at Calvary. Heaven is smiling. Really? That's what makes heaven smile? God's up there like, oh, that's awesome. You did free pizza and had a big crowd. Way to go. That's what makes heaven smile. I have a friend who pastors a church, a large church, and he announces the numbers often. And I don't. And he told me one day, he said, Rod, I realize I'm living by that sword, and one day I could die by that sword. Yeah. Here's the principle. If this is it, this will be the best thing you get today. If you never tell the numbers when you're up, you don't have to tell the numbers when you're down. Right? Come on, do you remember the old days, the attendance boards up front? Some of you may still have them. If you do, let me know, and I'll send somebody to steal it in the middle of the night so you can say, I don't know what happened to it. And it was like that's how they judged your performance every week. And there's this gap in between Sunday school and church, and everyone's sitting there. Somebody's practicing on the piano, and the Sunday school superintendent comes out, and everybody's watching. He's got a box of numbers, and he walks up to that thing, and like it's the report card on you that he puts up there. And then everybody looks, and you're just devastated by that. And then you go to other churches, and you could shoot a shotgun and not hit a person, but you see the board, and it's like attendance last Sunday 190. And I went somewhere like that. I asked the pastor. I said, "Man, is it that bad that I came and we're down this much?" He said, "Oh no, that's Easter." So you're still keeping that number up on the board this long later? Now, if you judge success by the numbers, someone else will judge your success by the numbers. God didn't call me to crowds. God called me to be faithful. I never want to confuse my assignment with me. Leading this church is my current assignment from the Lord, and it happens to be large. But that's just my current assignment. My next assignment, it might not be at a large church. And so I want to be faithful at that assignment. The size of it has nothing to do. I think sometimes like there will be different avenues in heaven, and the guy who pastored 100 will say, "We got a little place for you on Hallelujah Avenue." And then the guy who pastored 1,000, they're going to be like, "Come on over, you can stay at Glory Way." And then if you pastored a mega church, please, we have mansions reserved for you. And we kind of glorify size, which makes no sense. And I have a feeling it might be the exact opposite in heaven. And so I look at some friends who, like their church has more people than the population of their town. And I'm saying, well, you're pastoring a way bigger church than me. I gauge it by percentage of the population in the town. And so if we're gauging ourselves by percentage of the population in our town, we're doing a dismal job compared to a lot of other people. So, it's what do we do when the crowd's not there? So, Leon Brockington. Leon's wife, Kathy, for many years, prayed for Leon to accept Jesus. Leon was an alcoholic, pretty well-known drunk in town. And every Tuesday, some ladies would fast and pray with her for Leon. One Sunday night, it was raining, and I mean, it's just raining buckets. So you got the combination, it's Sunday and it's raining. Sunday night and it's raining, so you're not expecting much. And for whatever reason that night at the end of the message, salvation altar call, which Sunday night and it's raining, what's the point of that? It's just like, your only chance is if your freebie comes and gets saved again. And and that night, Leon got up and walked to the front and knelt at the altar. I walked down, began to pray with him, tears pouring down his face. He accepted the Lord, and God instantly delivered him from alcohol. It's been now like 17 years, and he hasn't had a drop since. About a year and a half later, on Christmas, I was up at the office, and usually one of my boys and I do hospital calls on Christmas Day because they give you incredible credit when you do that. And so we'd stop by the church, and there was Leon, and he just kind of pulled in the parking lot. And I said, "Man, what's up?" And it was a year and a half after he'd accepted Jesus. And he said, "Every day I step foot on the ground here. And I thank God I don't ever want to forget where Jesus set me free." So thank God that we didn't just phone it in since it's a Sunday night and it's raining. Winter weather, our winter weather policy is we have church. If you can make it, I'll be here. If you can't make it, don't worry about it. I got a four-wheeler, I'll get here. But if you can make it, come on. And because God didn't call me to crowds. He called me to be faithful. The only numbers we share are our missions numbers, and we share that the first Sunday of every month. It's just kind of like what came in last month, what went out, and year to date. Now, there are numbers in the bio on the back of my books because the publishers always want that, but they are comically wrong. They use the numbers for the second book, for the third book. On one of the books, it's awesome. The back of the book has one number, and the inside of the book has a different number. So I didn't bother fixing that because nobody cares. I can't imagine somebody picking up a book and saying, oh man, they run that many, I'm going to read that book. That's just weird. Number 5, resist the temptation to think, if only we had. If only we had a bigger building, if only we had more staff, if only we had a piano player who knew how to play in more than one key, if only we had more parking, if only we had a big, huge lobby, if only we had a coffee shop, if only we had small groups, if only we had more Sunday school space. One of the quickest ways to lose momentum is to focus on what you don't have. Because it replaces the good, positive feelings with a subtle negative bent. It's subtle, but it's there. And when the leader feels that way, that leaks. It's a momentum drain. So the day I taught this to our team, I made a list. I wish we had a bigger sanctuary. I wish we had a bigger stage. I wish our stage wasn't in a corner. That's really bizarre. I wish we had more than 10 acres. I wish we had on-site parking. I wish we had 3 more big rooms for Sunday school. I wish we had sealed concrete instead of horrible-looking tile. We finally did that. I wish we had a student ministry building. I just had this long list, and then I told the team, you know what? We don't. But I am incredibly thankful for what we do have, and I refuse to spend my time focusing on what we don't have. I want to model an attitude of gratitude. I mean, you know that in your marriage, if you focus on what your spouse isn't, it affects the way you treat them, and that focus leads. So save the if only conversations and thoughts for strategic planning meetings. That's just something you'll never hear from me. If I allowed myself to think that way, there's no way we can be the size we are, in the building we are, and the location we are. It's not possible. So we did that in spite of all the stuff we don't have. If only we had teaches people ingratitude. So celebrate the problems. People should hear you say, I love this problem. And most of the things that you're wanting wouldn't grow the church anyway. We have people come and visit us pretty often, and they'll stay through like Sunday, and then they'll come through our whole meeting arc on Mondays, and then at the end of all the meetings on Mondays, I'll sit down and talk to them, and what were your observations, thoughts. So this guy came from another state, and he visited, and when we finally sat down, he said, I know, here's what our biggest problem, we need a bigger lobby. He said, we've got a good location. If we get a new lobby, our church is going to explode. And so they have a plan. They're going to spend $500,000 for a lobby, and they're going to get momentum. And so I listened to the whole thing. And then he's ready to go. I said, hey, can you just give me 10 minutes? And he said, well, yeah. I said, let's take a walk. And my office is in the preschool department, literally. Like, you got to walk through the pictures and the take-home sheets and all that to get there. It was a whole nother story. Like when they were redoing their bathroom, they used mine. So that's pretty awesome when you got a line of like 20 preschoolers in your office waiting to go to the potty. And you know what that potty looks like when they're all done. So there is not enough Lysol to solve that problem. So I said, come on, let's take a walk. And it's a long walk from my office to the front of the building. And so we walked and talked. And then I stopped in our lobby, which is from about me to Jeremy. And we just stood there. And he said, what's this? I said, oh, this is our lobby. I said, but if you build a big one, you'll have a big church. And man, the keys to churches are not lobbies. Now, would I love a big, beautiful lobby? It'd be awesome to have, but we don't have it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to reach people without a lobby. Yeah. So there's not a church that's like, man, we got everything we want. Right. Yeah. So whatever God's blessed you with, grow the church with that. Whatever, focus on the areas that have momentum. I've never heard anyone else teach this, but when you hear it, I think it'll make sense. Most people leverage momentum to fix problem areas. I do the exact opposite. I focus money and people and staff and attention on the areas that have momentum. I want to add fuel to the fire. So you say, well, everything has momentum at our church. You don't believe that. You don't. It just feels that way. So find the things that are making huge kingdom gains and make those even greater. And you can actually increase the surge when you do that. So Latinos, that's just a big growth area for us. So I gave money to make our outreaches bigger. I booked gas. I showed up more myself. I sent leaders to training events. In just a few days, we're hoping we'll get our official letter of certification from the INS, and we'll be the first Assembly of God church in the nation certified to represent immigrants in immigration court. And so we're super excited about that. We're just pouring everything we can into that. Celebrate Recovery. I featured a message. I cheered for the leaders. I pushed people toward. There's 350, 400 people here on Tuesday nights for Celebrate Recovery. So we're just putting everything we can in that online campus. When we saw that just all of a sudden start blowing up, we just added more resources to it. We put teams together not to ask why do these areas have momentum, but instead to say these areas have momentum, so let's build on that. In fact, one of the most important things, if you don't have momentum, find one thing that's working and celebrate it like crazy. Districts can and should do this. Nationally, we should do this. I don't understand why we don't. Change the conversation from what's going wrong to what's going right. And in the days of social media, changing the conversation is so easy. You can just keep celebrating the one thing that's going good. Here's the principle. When you have momentum, problem areas and ineffective ministries die a quieter death. So why would you waste your momentum on the ladies' quilting club that's been 3 people in a back room for 40 years, and you're going to waste momentum trying to build that? Don't let them die, but let the club die. It's a wonderful thing when momentum kills things. Number 7, not people, things. Although there are some churches that are one funeral away from revival. Right there, I got an amen. I thought I would.
He ain't never going to.
Number 7, pay the relational price. Every price is a relational price.
That's right.
So in times of momentum, strengthen key relationships and build new ones. We did a deal a few years ago. We noticed that our church family was kind of just nitpicking stuff, just kind of making us tired. And so one day in staff meeting said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to, everyone on the team, we're going to write 10 thank you notes a week. We're not going to do like a list of who it is. I just want everybody writing thank you notes. 10 thank you notes a week. And, we multiplied, so we're sending out like 300 thank you notes a week. And 4 weeks later, we started getting thank you notes from church members. And it changed the culture. And they became grateful instead of nitpicking. So pay the relational price. If you got a bunch of whiners and complainers, start writing thank you notes. And watch it change. Number 8, when you have momentum, remember the critics still exist. That's pretty encouraging, isn't it?
Still true.
Momentum can fool you to thinking you no longer have critics. You do. They just can't talk loud enough to be heard over the momentum and the excitement of the crowd. So why do I say that? Well, I'm not being negative, but if you mistakenly think you don't have critics, when one of them emerges, it affects you way more than it should. So don't overreact. We might talk about this afternoon to criticism and critics. Be realistic. Not everyone's happy about momentum. Some people don't want things to grow and change because it lessens their power and it lessens their influence. You will still lose people when you have momentum. The principle is momentum, which is by its definition moving forward, usually leaves something behind. It just happens. In fact, the very reason they leave is the thing you're celebrating. So we have had people leave because of our diversity. I cringe because I watch the churches they go to, and I realize that church just grew by racists. Wow. And I think, man, now they're going to have the problem being what they need to be. And they don't say, well, I don't like black people. That's why I'm leaving. Instead, they say, well, I don't like the direction of the church. That's one of my favorite things when people say that, the direction of the church. And so I just ask them, I say, so let's just unpack that so I can learn which part of the direction don't you like? Is it like, are we reaching too many lost people? Well, what part of that? Well, I just don't like the direction. He said, well, tell me more about the direction. Well, I just don't like the direction. They don't know. But they're leaving because of the very thing we're celebrating. Now, I think at this point, if they're racist, bigots, I've either driven them out or underground. Either one's fine with me. But I apologize to some of you, because I look around and I see a few of you that got them. I apologize. I'm sorry for you. Their tithe is wonderful. I lost 2 of my top 10 givers. Their tithe is wonderful, but it ain't worth it. So, and I just encourage you to preach against the same stuff, and if we all preach against it, they'll just have to start their own little clan. Every church has critics, and every church has weird people. Now, I have a theory, all right? So don't tweet this theory, but just let me unpack this for a second. I think, here's my theory, I think smaller churches have a higher percentage of weird people.
No doubt.
Right? Because they get noticed more in smaller churches.
Yeah.
They can't just like hide in the fabric.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we don't have weird people. We got weird people. For years, and he moved on, but we had Eddie. And Eddie sat on the front row. And Eddie wore this pouch around his neck. And in the pouch around his neck, he had a lamb, like a little stuffed lamb, with just kind of its head showing above the pouch. And the name tag on the lamb was Messiah. So he sat on the front row, Eddie and Messiah, the lamb. And every once in a while while I was preaching, the Messiah would be energized by a point. And so he would kind of wave his hand in excitement while I'm speaking. And so one of my favorite things is to watch guest speakers. I wouldn't warn them, wouldn't tell them. So Jim Bradford was here speaking one time. It's the 11:30 service, so it's like the 4th go-round. And he's saying something in the middle, and all of a sudden, he's getting a little excited. I look, and the Messiah is celebrating. And Jim just froze. What did he do? And then Eddie and the Messiah decided they'd get involved in prayer time. And so the Messiah was laying. It's true story. We put a stop to that, but how weird to be the church that tells the Messiah he can't pray. So we still have weird people, and as we can tell stories all day about weird people. This is. I'm not going to do it. It's in my heart right now, so we're going to move on. Number 9. Choose risks wisely. I understand that when you have momentum, you can take more risks, but don't push the envelope on things that will invite criticism. You're going to get criticism anyway, so don't make it free and easy.
Right.
Defending risks distracts the leader.
That's good.
And a distracted leader takes away from momentum. So one of the guys I coach, I'm super proud of him. Matter of fact, in 2 weeks, he's going to get the award for the fastest growing church in the nation. I'm super proud of him and everything that's happening there. He called me one day all excited. He said, man, we got a car donated for missions. He told me about the car, and he said the guy donated it so we could raffle it for missions. And I listened to all the excitement, and then I said, hey, Mike, don't do it. He said, what do you mean? It's going to be free money. It's going to be awesome. People can buy tickets. It's going to be incredible. I said, don't do it. I said, the criticism you'll get for doing a raffle, which people are going to call gambling, is going to distract you from the wonderful momentum God's currently given the church.
It's true.
So let's not do it. Call the guy and says if he really wants to give it to missions, just sell the car, give the money to missions, and you'll do something with it. You don't want to purposely put stuff out there for people to criticize. Number 10, when you have momentum, confront attitude issues in staff and leadership. Momentum can cause you to decide that some things don't matter, and because everything's going good, you overlook things that you'd usually address. Don't do it, confront it. Because if you don't, it will grow and it will kill the momentum. I told our team one Monday, I said, you got 21 days to have every conversation you need to have. We're going to be current. I'm just tired of the yeah, so we're going to be current. You got 21 days. Resolve everything. You got 21 days. We're not going to do this. But one other rather famous time, after just 2 staff members continually clashing, I said, all right, I'm going to lock you in the library. I said, so when you come out, either love each other or one of you is fired, you choose. And I don't care which one you choose. We're just not going to do this. Keep your eyes open for tension in the team. The principle is that momentum causes tension. Because there's more of everything. There's more people. There's more stuff happening. There's more competition. There's more potential for overlap. There's more schedule conflicts. There's more room conflicts. There's more personnel conflicts. Tension just happens. Number 11, realize you're missing details. Have someone studying your systems, guest assimilation, stuff like that. It's easy for details to fall through the cracks when you're surging forward, and the details matter. And I'll directly disagree with that. Number 12, don't be distracted by little things that don't matter. Will new floors add people? Not a single person. I've never met the person who's like, man, I walked in that church, and when I saw the red carpet, it reminded me of the blood of Jesus, and I fell to my knees and said, yes, I want to receive it. It just doesn't make a difference. So we'll do stuff like that when we have time and money. When momentum is happening, don't be distracted by irrelevant details that have nothing to do with capacity or ministry. Remember the first time I went to Tommy Barnett's church? I'm somewhat OCD. And I went, and there were chairs and props everywhere in the hallway. Looked like a flea market. And I was appalled. But then the more time I spent, I realized people were coming to Christ. And they just weren't so worried about chairs. Focus on the main thing. Say, well, I thought you just said details matter. Here's the principle. Details that matter, matter. If you got people to focus on that, great. But the leader can't be stressing about little things that won't add momentum and aren't stopping momentum. Save those things for when you need a win. Next one, build systems for the next level. Because inadequate systems can stop momentum and growth. It's easier to change systems when you have momentum because change can throw people off. So one of the things we work really hard at is building systems for the next level beyond where we are now. We don't ever want to be building systems for where we currently are. That way, if and when we grow, we've already developed the system. It's a capacity issue. The systems are changing, we're increasing capacity, and then a simple law of thermodynamics is that capacity equals flow. So you just want to continue increasing capacity in that. So we just try to stay one level ahead of where we are. So systems require a different look. I'll tell you what works at 200 people doesn't work at 500 people. And what works at 500 people doesn't work at 1,000 people. It doesn't mean it's bad, it just doesn't work. And so you continually have to change. We have scrapped virtually every way we relate to people and guests. And as we go, we are continually recreating systems. It's absolutely tiring. So we've just come out of 2 years of the biggest restructuring in our history. We had 14 team members that either completely changed jobs or were new, all at once. I had this thought, I said, if we know we have to make all these changes, let's do them all at once. That was the dumbest thing I've ever done. I mean, I threw the organization into absolute chaos, and we've been in chaos for 2 years. We're just now growing out of it. But the system that had allowed us to grow to that point wasn't sufficient to allow us to continue to grow. So everything's changing. Our biggest challenge right now as a church is me. So if you ask our team, if you ask any team member right now, what's the biggest challenge at First NLR? what's got to change, they would all answer, let's rod. We're too rod-centric, too focused on me. And so to get the next place as a church, I have to change. And so we're trying to wean ourselves off that unhealthy reliance on me, which, by the way, is very painful for me. When the leader changes, systems have to change. So when Garrison was here, we did something called Pastor's Desserts. I've heard him teach on them. And a couple times a year, all the guests would come on a Friday night, and we'd be in the room formerly known as the Fellowship Hall, and we would be in there, and there'd be tables, and it'd be all amazingly decorated and all that stuff going on. And Garrison had worked the mic, and he'd walk around the different tables, and they'd be doing great. He'd play the piano with his feet. It was classic Alton. So I became pastor, and the first pastor's dessert was horrible. I mean, it was horrible. Absolutely a train wreck disaster. So the next day when we were evaluating that, I said, so why was that so bad? And there was this long pause, and then Pam Harrell said, well, you. She said, you were horrible. And that's why it was so bad. And I mean, you were miserable. Well, Garrison is this extrovert and he loves crowds. I'm an introvert and I don't love crowds. And so we had to change the way we relate to people. To put 180 people in a room and me try to be their buddy is a disaster. Every time. So instead, every Sunday, I have lunch here at the church with a couple of guest families. We have food teams that rotate. That's their ministry, and they make the food. And then I'm great sitting down with two families. I'm horrible in the large setting. I'm just bad at it. So I'm the guy that you're just as likely when a big party's done. I just want to be by myself because it just exhausts me to do that. So we had to change. When who you're reaching changes, the system has to change. So we start reaching unchurched people, and our membership thing completely had to shift. Because we did the thing that a lot of churches do, like twice a year, you can come, and it's like 3 weeks of classes, and you can be a member. When we started actually reaching lost people, they hated that. They were like, I can join a bar in 5 minutes, and I got to wait 6 months and go to 3 hours of classes to join your church. So we changed, and now we do membership class whenever you want it. We have a team of people trained to teach membership. If you want to be a member, awesome. Go to this room. They'll do membership teaching. And if you're from a Baptist church, they know how to teach a Baptist how to come. You're going to be a great tither. Here's the things you're going to struggle with. If you're coming from a mainline denomination, here's what you're going to like. Here's what you're going to need a challenge with. If you're unchurched, so we tailor it for the person. It's just because the people we're reaching changed. 14, be aware of hitchhikers. Before I hurt my back, I loved running distance. That was just kind of how I cleared my mind. There's nothing worse if you're a runner than running with someone whose normal pace is about 45 seconds a mile slower than you. You're just dragging the whole time, and you never get to that comfortable, easy pace where you're not even paying attention to what's happening. When you have momentum, people, projects, and ministries want to attract themselves to you. The problem is that often they're attracted to your momentum, not your vision. They're hitchhiking on the momentum. It's flattering when people want to join you. Makes you feel good. But if they're not attracted to the vision, they're not attached to that vision, they're like that runner who's 45 seconds slower, and they will create a drag on your forward progress. And you allow, because of your ego, you allow people to attach themselves to you that slow down what God's doing in your church. Or, since you didn't like that one, number 15. Don't stop learning. It's easy to get complacent. When other people are benchmarking against you, it's easy to believe you're as good as they say. So we reached that place as a team where we became very self-impressed. People were coming and studying us and learning from us. And so we started actually believing that we were as good as they thought we were. I recognized that. And so we moved the benchmark. And we said we're going to benchmark not against churches, we're going to benchmark caring for people, customer service against the Ritz-Carlton. I sent 3 team members to Ritz-Carlton training. We were the first church that had ever gone. They're like, why are you here? And they came back, and when they shared with our team, they were weeping. And they said, these people are just renting beds and toilets, and they care more about people than we do. And we changed. The current trend is get a coach. That's okay. I like coaches, but remember, context is key. A coach absent context is merely making educated guesses. Maybe.
That's good.
You got to know context to help somebody. So somebody called me and asked me a question. I said, well, before I can even give you a thought, I need to spend about 45 minutes asking about your church. And not everything I say will work for you. I know that. As you listen to me today, you'll notice that I give you very few here's how to something. We talk principles because my context is different. So I don't teach practices, I teach principles. Now, if I know your context, I can suggest practices, but principles transfer. So some of the books we've learned from the last few months, Creativity, Inc., not a Christian book, so it's got to have some language in it, but the ways of thinking are awesome. Getting Naked by Patrick Lencioni. I know the title is not one you want to like carry around in your church, but it's about having the difficult, honest conversations in an atmosphere of love. It's a fantastic book. We're committed to having those conversations. One that I just read and I'm reading again, is just rocking my world, is The Power of Moments. How to take an ordinary experience and transform it into an unforgettable moment. It's fantastic. If you haven't read Everybody Always by Bob Goss, the book and a box of Kleenex. It's a fantastic book about just loving people. Easy read, great book. We just want to always be learning. Number 16, celebrate. Don't be so focused on growing and the next mountain that you forget to celebrate what God's doing now. So throw a party, send a bunch of thank you notes, thank people, honor people, model gratitude and appreciation. The principle is you get what you celebrate.
That's right.
I'm working on a new talk, and I'm not there yet. What I'm working on is you get what you celebrate, you get what you tolerate, you get what you elevate, you get what you anticipate, you get what you initiate. But get what you celebrate is so powerful. It's the most powerful leadership principle I've learned. So years ago, when we took the church in Lone Oak, which rather famous moment in an Arkansas District Board meeting where one of the old lions of the district shook his finger in my face and said there will never be an effective Assembly of God church in Lone Oak, Arkansas. And I took that to mean that the Lord was calling us to Lone Oak. And no one believed it would work, but I thank God for a superintendent that's willing to take risks on stuff that aren't supposed to work. And Larry Moore was like, man, we'll give you the church if you'll give it a shot. And then I saw the building, I understood why he gave it to me. Literally, when it came time to build a new building and sell that building, we couldn't. We were just praying for a very localized tornado. No one wanted it. I finally said, if you can find somebody, just take it. If we can give it to somebody, just get it off our books, we'll do it. But years ago when we started, it was so funny because the building was tore up, and there was a room where the floors sagged, and we painted, we did all that kind of stuff. Our biggest challenge was to use the bathroom. You had to walk through the nursery, and which is a little hostile. And then we discovered, when we started, the church was about 12. When it got to about 65, we discovered the capacity of the sewage system. And that was about the capacity, and then the toilet would back up, and then that smell in the nursery would be very memorable. And so we actually made a rule that if you were a member of the church, you weren't allowed to go potty at the church. And so members knew you either had to go before you came, or if you really had to go, you just had to drive a block and a half to Dollar General and go. And then only guests were allowed to go to the bathroom at the church. And then the day they became a member, we'd say, now that you're a member, we need to tell you a rule, you aren't going to go to the bathroom anymore. It was awesome. It was so much fun. But early on, all of a sudden we started having people in the nursery. Which, by the way, this has nothing to do with it. Ronnie Gilmore has had to build a children's wing at Hot Springs Village and more nursery rooms. When he started at Hot Springs Village, we made fun of him. We said, yeah, like, your nursery will be people older than me. So we joked about wheelchair races and all that. Now they've got nurseries. So in Lone Oak, they're having a real hard time getting nursery workers. And so they tried everything, and one day Derek was asking me about it. I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to do this next Sunday. Tell me about who you got. One lady who's faithful. I said, awesome, perfect. I want you to go buy flowers. But I just don't want a dozen. I want like a barrel of roses. I want you to buy the biggest thing you can put roses in, and the criteria is she can't carry it. Okay? So, I want 50, 60 roses. I want it to be impossible. I want there to be 2 people carrying the roses. Then I want you to go to the plaque place. I want you to buy the biggest plaque they have. Don't care what it looks like. Biggest plaque ever. And then here's the wording I want on the plaque. I told them all this. I said, now here's what we're going to do. Next Sunday morning, you're going to send somebody back to nursery. And then when she comes out, we're going to make a script. You're going to talk about somebody that's living out the value that every soul matters to God. They're pouring into the next generation. They're making a difference. And you're going to give her this barrel of flowers and this plaque. And then I want there to be a standing ovation. I said, I'll send some people. So they'll be there to make sure we have a standing ovation. They'll start it. And then I want that standing ovation lasting at least 2 minutes. I want it to be uncomfortable long, 2 minutes long. And so I want people whistling and cheering. She's going to cry. It's going to be awesome. He said, and then I asked people if they want to work in the nursery. I said, no, just do all that. So they had the big celebration. We've got 12 or 14 people stacking the room, so there's a standing ovation. The next week, 3 people volunteered to work in the nursery. You get what you celebrate. Instead of getting mad at the people who aren't doing what you wish they do, celebrate the people who are and watch other people flock and want to do the same thing. People work jobs that are boring and they don't ever get celebrated. And if people live their whole life and never get a standing ovation, so why wouldn't you be the place that's like, yeah, you're making a difference? We went nuts Sunday for somebody who's been working in the nursery 26 years. Celebrate the people who are serving and faithful and watch other people want to be a part of that instead of getting mad at the very people who aren't there. Number 17, get new people involved in leadership and ministry. You're excited about momentum and you feel like you can go forever. Your people leave the momentum of the church and go back to their boring jobs. And what adds fuel to their fire is new people on the team. So use the momentum to add players instead of adding responsibility to current players. Very important. You got to know who you can lean on. You got to know who's maxed out. Very rare people that can always add one more thing. I've only known a couple of people like that in my lifetime. So assume your key people can. Know their capacity. 2014 was the second time we did it, and then we did it again last year, 17. And our only goal as a church was to add 500 new people in ministry. Last year we raised it to 600 new people. No other metric. We just want to add new people in ministry. Biggest growth ever. All we did was that. We had a report every month in staff meeting. We had a goal. Just add people in ministry. The fastest way to grow your church is to get more people in ministry. It's the magic bullet. Years ago, Patrick and I did a lot of surveys for churches, and we measured what we called involvement indicators. And we looked at involvement indicators, went to Sunday school, tithe, came to Sunday night, invited people, all this. The only involvement indicator that moved the bubble on every other involvement indicator was being involved in ministry. And if you were involved in ministry, you were more likely to do all the other things. If there's a magic bullet, it's it. It's important that you know people's capacity. In our setting, if somebody has 2 or 3 ministry positions, we see that as bad stewardship. Because they're taking a ministry position someone else should have. And so we generally then work coaching and saying, we want you to back off. And we want to focus you a little more tightly. 18, we're almost done. We'll get there. Quickly own your mistakes as fast as you can. Even with momentum, you'll make mistakes. And that's a wonderful time to change the way your church deals with mistakes. So a few years ago, we did something on Halloween, and which, by the way, I think it's so weird that churches do stuff on Halloween. That just makes no sense to me. So we celebrate Halloween. It's like the only defensive event that a church does. The only reason you do a Halloween thingy is so you don't want your church people going to another church to discover that their candy's better than your candy, and then they might become Methodist. So we do this thing just so they don't. And then just people go from church to church and collect candy, and we call it outreach. And it just makes no sense. So I'm about to tell a story about a Halloween thing, but a few years ago we just said, you know what, we're just not going to be a church that celebrates Halloween. That's just weird. We're just going to stop. We're going to celebrate other days, but we're not going to celebrate Halloween. That's just bizarre. But this particular year I said, we need to do something bigger than ourselves. We've never had an event that it was impossible from a capacity perspective. So let's just do something crazy. So we came up with this concept, Candy Factory. Every ministry in the church, every room turned into a different part of the factory, and they went all out. There was a room with conveyor belts, and they put something on one end, chocolate come out on the other end. We had tour guides to take people through the candy factory. It was epic. When I got here an hour and a half before it, the line stretched from our front doors all the way around that front parking lot, and then all the way down the whole length of the property to the bottom end that way and across there. And my first thought was, man, we did it. Then we started letting people inside. And literally the goal of the event changed from connecting to people to let's try to make it where no one gets trampled to death. Literally, like on the walkie-talkie, somebody said, new goal, no deaths. Because there were so many people you couldn't move. It was disaster. When it was over, it took 2 weeks of the whole team every day, plus every volunteer we could manipulate to restore the building. It was horrible. And so everybody knew it was horrible. We had no one to the church, thousands of people here. We had no one to the church. We made no meaningful connections. We did make it without any deaths, so that was great. And so then I got up on the Sunday night and I said, how many were at Candy Factory? And they're, sheepishly, everybody's hand went up, and they're kind of doing this, and there was a few little chuckles. And I said, that was the worst thing we've ever done as a church. Said, so here's my commitment to you. We will never do that again. And I got a standing ovation. It was awesome. And when they sat down, I said, okay, but the motive was right. We want to establish relationship with people who don't know Jesus. And so we're going to keep trying to build bridges of relationship. Some of the things are going to fail. Some of the things are going to work. But we're just going to keep trying to do that. The principle is if you don't own your mistakes, someone else will give them to you. And when someone else gives them to you, it looks like a cover-up. So when you have momentum, run up there and admit when something's wrong. Do it before anyone else can tell you it was. The old maxim was never let them see you sweat. That was stupid. What that meant was be fake and hope the people don't catch you. Number 19, expect attacks. from Satan and from people. Satan's wise, and he targets those who are making a difference. And he often uses people in those attacks. It would be awesome if momentum made you immune from attacks. It doesn't. They still happen. A couple years ago, I was accused of leading worship to a false god because I have a Christmas tree in my office. And a core person who I thought was my friend went on this most incredible rampage. I have pages of the email that I was leading us in pagan worship. Attacks still happen when you have momentum. I might lead the Assemblies of God in attacks. So it's just, it is a regular occurrence. So momentum doesn't make you immune from that. Often they will attack you for the very thing that's causing the momentum.
Sure.
And you just, at some point, you got to be like Nehemiah. I'm on the wall. I'm doing great work. I can't come down. Number 20, 2 left. And then I'll stop because this is a long time to listen to me. Guard your marriage, your integrity, your morality, and that of your leaders. In times of momentum, the thought is, I'm the man. Or I'm the bomb. That's the first step to failure. I'm good, I'm important, this church is lucky they have me, this team is lucky they have me, God's lucky he has me. We have a tendency to get so caught up in big things that we neglect the little things. And realize that and keep your guard up. Follow your safeguards. Don't take shortcuts. It's interesting to me, but we spend more time praying and depending on God when things aren't going well. When it's rolling, we're just trying to keep up with it. We do this deal where when things are going bad, people are attacking us, and we're feeling like, God, I give you this church. Lord, this is your church. You do what you want with your church. And then when things are going good, it's our church. And sometimes I wonder if God's like, man, would you just give me something good once in a while? So just give me all your junk. Nothing stops momentum faster than a failure in the leadership team. It sucks the life out of the leader. It demoralizes the team. It's the ultimate momentum killer. It takes the team and church a long time to recover. It takes even longer for the leader to recover. We've been there. We understand that pain. I told Cindy a while back, I said, I couldn't have an affair if I wanted to. Because I live an open life of accountability. So everyone has the code to my cell phone. Junior hires can open my cell phone. I have 4 staff members who have all the passwords to all my social medias and who regularly log on to my social media, including the private messages and all that. My email is duplicated on my assistant's computer, on a computer that's in our kitchen, and on another computer. Say, well, why do you do that? Are you planning to fail? No, I'm doing everything I can not to fail. The principles are this: failure happens in isolation. Growth happens in community. And loneliness often leads to isolation. So not only do you have to guard that in your own heart, you got to guard your key leaders. And those conversations need to be normal in your church, that we can talk about that. Number 21, last one. Oh, next to last one. Rest. When you have momentum, there's lots and lots to do, and you've got energy. Momentum gives the leader wonderful energy. You have more to do than hours in the day, so you work hard, you work long, you neglect your body and your spirit, and sometimes relationships that matter. I just want to caution you, if you have momentum, make sure your pace is sustainable. We're in this for the long haul. I love to teach out of my strengths. This is not. I've been a bad example of this. 2014, Jim Bradford came and spoke on Sunday and then at all our meetings, and then he stayed for dinner with our board. Jim's a good friend. And when he's done teaching the board, he opened it up for questions. And one of the guys said, "What's the red flags in your church?" And I'm sitting by Jim, and he turned to me and said, "Do you want me to answer?" Which I had a pretty good idea that meant it wasn't going to be good. I said, "Yeah, I mean, I'm committed to hearing truth from people I love. Give it to me." And I wrote down what he said. He said, "Rod can do this for 2 more years. If he doesn't change, he will either die or he'll plateau the church." We are 4 years later. I don't want to plateau the church, but I have not made those changes. And it is the most impending crisis in our church.